Hello, and welcome to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo, with Philip Noffard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters across the car retailing sector, from factory to forecourt.
Well, welcome to the pods. July's here. It's getting hot again. America's got a big birthday. Wimbledon's underway. We're in what feels like the 10th week of the World Cup. And Philip's back from his holiday.
Yes, I'm back. Yeah, just getting used to things again. Can't believe how it's so difficult, isn't it, when you have a week off and then you forget what you... Weirdly, we just seem to forget how to do these.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary how quickly you can forget things because you've been away for a few days.
Yeah, it's not good. But we must begin by giving a shout out to Carl, who kindly sat in for me and did a sterling job as the second part of the Blues Brothers with you on last week's podcast, Curtis.
Yeah, friend of the pod, Carl Davis. Great fun last week recording with him. Although there were a couple of instances, Philip, when I nearly called him Phil. I had to sort of recalibrate, but no, many thanks, Carl. It was great catching up with you, and I know you enjoyed co-presenting last week. Lots of great stories to get through, and it's always good to get his take as a sort of stalwart, really, industry stalwart, on what's happening in the industry.
And you struggled through the heat as well, didn't you, Bolt? I mean, you kind of recorded on probably one of the peak hot days of last week.
Yeah, I was in a very hot home office here, and he was actually in a Jaguar Land Rover dealership with air conditioning. Yeah, and I asked him at the end, are you feeling still nice and comfortable? He said, well, bit cold actually. I'm thinking of putting the heating.
That is the problem, eh? We're trying to keep the sound, the background sound down, but that means turning fans and any sort of open windows and trying to make it enclosed. But when you do it, without the aircon, it makes it a little bit challenging. But as you said, Curtis, I mean, it's end of the half year point. We're now into July, which brings us nicely on to this week's Brego special podcast with Rupert that we did earlier in the week, that was talking through sort of June trade values and really thinking about what is happening in year to date, what the market looks like at this half year point, in addition to what their view was, and Rupert sort of seeing through the month of June.
Yeah, and do catch the full episode. We've got an extract on today's pods, but do check out the full episode, because Rupert does go into quite a bit of detail across the various sectors, the age points, and that data was sort of fresh off his screen, wasn't it? Because he was still crunching numbers as we were talking to him.
It was, yeah, and just for clarity, they did. If you've listened to the full interview there with Rupert, or you've yet to listen to it, the second award that he couldn't quite remember, was the Supplier Investment Project of the Year, which they did actually go on to win on Tuesday night of this week down at the Independent Dealer Awards 2026, sponsored by held by Motor Trader, wasn't it? So and that was down at the Belfry this year. So yeah, we've got some results for that as well.
Well, we have indeed. So a lot of categories. I think there's certainly over 20 and just under 30. But we'll cherry pick some of the winners on this. So UK Independent Dealer of the Year for general sales, 0 to 50 cars. 0 to 50. That's curious. Yeah.
What if no? Can they go in for it if they've got no cars?
Yeah, who knows? But
they got no cars. Are they a dealer? Duh.
The winner was Culloden Cars, so congratulations to them. And the next size up, Independent Dealer of the Year for 50 to 100 car businesses, was won by David James. And the next one up, 102, 250 cars, was won by Oakdean Collection. So congratulations to all of them.
Yeah, we must give a shout out because Umesh Samami, who was on the podcast recently, that not only owns specialist cars down in Stoke, he's also the chair of the IMDA, which is Independent Motor Dealer Association, and he was actually won the Lifetime Achievement Award for his role and the work that he's doing with the IMDA. So a huge shout out to Umesh and the guys there at the IMDA and the work they're doing for the independent dealer sector.
If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer group bosses, managers, and decision makers on one of our Motor Trade Radio supplier special episodes, then get in touch at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
And some of the companies already featured on our supplier specials include Autoglim, Lifeshine, Impel, Prospecting Dynamics, Tracker, Jigcar, and CheckVic. You can find them all in your podcast feed, along with our recent OEM specials with new EV brands Horizon, Ion, and Chang'an. And we also recently caught up with Suzuki. And if you would like us to profile your business, then just message us at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo.
Headlines this week come from AM, Motor Trader, and Car Dealer from the dealer press, as well as fleet news from the company car sector. Starting with used car prices performed strongly during the first half of 2026 as stock levels remained stable, according to Cazoo's market view analysis of June and the year to date. A report shows that EV repairs take longer and cost more than ICE repairs. There's an industry call for a higher MOT fee cap for cars and vans. And taking a look at some of the global trends, we have a press release from industry watcher Philippe Munoz analysing the growth of Chinese brand exports this year. And there's some eye-watering stats in that story, so do stay for that. We also reveal YouGov's top car brands in the UK Automotive Rankings report. And we'll finish off with some full-year results from two of the UK's biggest players, JCT600 and Steven Eagell. But first up, here's an extract from our interview with Rupert Pontin from Brego, talking about some of the key June trends discussed in our latest trade values episode.
I mean, Rupert, can you sum up some of the key trade value trends we covered in this month's full podcast episode?
Yeah, Philip. I mean, this month has been quite an interesting month when we look at the trade pricing, what's been happening with average trade pricing. I think overall there's a very, very slight increase in price, but the nuances in the market are quite interesting, particularly around electric vehicles and what's happening in the EV marketplace overall, and also what's happening within the Chinese car market area, where we're seeing an increase in the volume of sales, and that's starting to increase. They're starting to become more rapid. We're also seeing greater penetration, and we need to remember that we talked about the fact that there are for more Chinese cars being put into rental markets, and those will come back to the market even quicker.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a great chat, and as I say, we talked quite a bit about, we've got the Middle East conflict that's still going on. We've obviously seen how that's impacted EVs in the used car market, which I think we talked a little bit. The listeners on today might be on the list of the full episode, might be a little bit surprised as to what's happening now with those EV volumes. I mean, the other things we did talk about was obviously the top 10 fastest sellers, and you alluded to which are the new manufacturers, the Chinese electric manufacturers, which ones are selling quickest with those as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So Quite a surprise, I think, with the EV fastest sellers for June. The Audi Q4 e-tron sits at the top of the table there with just 8.6 days to sale. And when we look at what's going on in the Chinese marketplace now, if you include Volvo as part of the Chinese cars, which these days the market is through, Curtis was quite surprised when I sort of sold that to him as a bit of a duff.
It was in a curveball. He felt you threw a tizzball in there, wasn't it?
But no, that was the fastest seller. The Volvo XC40 Recharge Plus model at 5.85 days to sell. But in second place was the Leapmotor B10 with 9.4 days to sell. So, we're starting to see those Chinese cars pop up in the fastest seller lists.
Yeah, so it's fascinating, and it was good to chat through, because I said right at the start, it's a crucial time of the year. It's that half-year point, sets the scene for the remainder of the year. And when we did catch up, it was, next to the last day of the month as all that data was starting to come through for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The last day of the month is always difficult because we've got lots of data there. It's just starting to draw the trends and so forth from the whole month activity, as well as looking at it on a day by day basis. But it was a really interesting session, and what happens in the second half of the year will be focused really around EVs and Chinese cars, and what the government may do with the ZEV mandate and how that would impact.
So say there is a sort of a curveball with you, Curtis, to Volvo in there as the Chinese new entrant.
Yeah, and I'm still struggling to get my head around Volvo being Chinese brand. Yes, I know it's Chinese. It's under Chinese parentage, but it took me a while. In all honesty, it took me a while to get my head around MG being Chinese. So I'm getting there.
But no, I think you. I mean, it was a fact when just sort of that little brief sort of chat with Rupert there, covering some of that conversation that we had with Rupert earlier on in the week. So if you've not listened to the full interview with Rupert Pontin at Brego, then please do check your podcast feed. And it's only 30 minutes, 35 minutes, something like that. So worth a bit of time, and just to catch up on what's been happening in June, where he sees the market at the minute, and particularly as sort of around those Chinese manufacturers now sort of entering that mental market, which does change the landscape as well. So worth catching up on that one. But we'll get over to the headlines now. We've got, as Kurt said at the start, we've got an exclusive here from Cazoo, which I know you were involved with, and this is that used car prices strong and stock levels stable in the first half of 2026. And this is the latest from their market view, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and because it came out at the beginning of July, it meant that Cazoo could look back at the first 2 quarters of the year, the first 6 months, and provide a bit of context around what's happening in the market. And the headline pretty much says it all, really. Used car prices strong and stock levels stable over the course of the first half of the year. So the average price of, looking specifically at June, the average price of a used car on Cazoo was £17,471 in June, and that was a drop of 0.9% month on month, but it was actually up 1.7%, the equivalent of £291 year on year. And Cazoo goes on to make the point, and I did work with them on this, so I did see the data, and although prices have dipped for 6 consecutive months now, with June representing a 1.8% drop since January, they have actually increased each month on a year-on-year basis. So providing that much-needed context that, okay, prices have been dipping this year, but they're still ahead of where they were last year. And a further point on pricing, so the biggest price mover by age continues to be cars over 10 years, which is, I know, something we picked up with Rupert when we were discussing the trade values. A lot of interest in that older age segment. So prices for those vehicles were up 9% year on year to £7,574, although they were down 0.8% month on month, marking the first drop of the year. So too early to see if that's a trend for how the coming months will pan out.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a quote in the story from Lucy Tugby, who's the chief marketing officer there at Cazoo, saying that used car prices have performed strongly for dealers during the first 6 months of 2026, with prices consistently tracking above where they were last year, and that the affordability of older cars continues to resonate with many buyers, and saying that their viewing data shows that high levels of online searches for cars aged over 10 years, with sales potentially delivering some decent margins, especially for independent dealers. And that's obviously on the back of those stock levels averaging 54 units in June, which remain unchanged both month on month and year on year. So although we've got challenges in the market, that's a fairly positive state of market from Cazoo there, isn't it?
It is, yes, yeah, and yeah, we're doing this from the press release. So what we'll do is we'll put a link to the press release in the newsletter that goes out Monday morning because it is a lot more detailed. So definitely worth checking out.
And heading over to fleet news now, and this is some great data here, and this is that electric vehicle repairs take longer and cost more than ICE, and this is that as I said there, it's EVs involved in a collision are taking longer and costing more to repair than petrol or diesel cars, and this is from AX, isn't it? The research, and they've revealed this data, haven't they?
Yeah, so AX, if that's an unfamiliar name to you, you'll probably know them better as Accident Exchange. They did rebrand, so they're the vehicle replacement and accident aftercare specialist. And yeah, it's a good piece of research, this. And the Fleet News story, it's worth checking out because, again, it's very detailed. But we'll pick out some of the main points from it. And what they found in their research, so they looked at their data and they found that EV repair costs for non-fault incidents were 19% higher for EVs than internal combustion engine vehicles and spent 9% longer in the workshops. And within the story, it shows how figures from the Association of British Insurers have previously suggested that EVs are 25% more expensive to repair than ICE vehicles. So not as high as that, but still with a premium.
Yeah, and as you say, there's a nice little table in the story that does show some of the cost differences, and saying that looking at the average repair cost for ICE vehicles is 5,338 compared to EVs, which is 6,363, some 19.2% increase there between ICE and EVs, and that the average repair duration time is 23 days for ICE vehicles and 25 days for EVs, an increase of 8.7% between the two fuel types there. So clear evidence there that when an EV does require repair, then the costs do obviously increase and take time as well.
Yeah, and this is drawn from data of across 40,000 accidents handled through AX's network, nationwide network. And within the story, Scott Hamilton Cooper, who's the chief commercial officer at AX, gives his views on why there's this discrepancy and what the data shows. And he says the growth of EVs is creating new opportunities and challenges for the accident repair sector. And he says while the gap between EV and ICE repairs is narrowing as repairers gain experience and technology improves, the the AX repair report shows that EVs still place a greater overall burden on the repair process. And he calls out that this is partly due to more costly EV parts. And because EVs usually require calibration even for small repairs. So really adding a bit of context there as to why they're costing more and why they're taking longer.
Yeah, definitely. And sticking with the aftermarket and going over to AM Online, and this is that the IGA renews call for higher MOT fee cap for cars and vans. And I think this is the Independent Garage Association, for anybody that doesn't know who the IGA are, but this has been going on for some time, hasn't it? And you can't believe that the fee hasn't changed in such a long time.
Yeah, it's amazing, really, isn't it? So the IGA, as you say, they're part of the Retail Motor Industry Federation, and they do a lot of good work in the independent sector. And I've had the pleasure to work with them on various projects over the years, and they do a good job. And one of the jobs they do, and they're unrelenting about this, is lobbying. So the trade body has written to senior officials at the Department for Transport and the Treasury, arguing that the maximum MOT fee should be reviewed. They say as a matter of urgency after remaining unchanged for 16 years. And that really surprised me. It's been that long. So the cap is set at £54.85, and it's been that way since 2010.
It's frightening, isn't it? And I mean, and just as a side note, that I'm led to believe that the government has got a task force at the minute around the EVED, which is the pence per mile charge for electric vehicles that they announced to come into force in 2028. And part of the solution was to approach the MOT centres for them to capture the mileage on the vehicles, to then port that for charge. But the question was asked is who's going to pay? Because the government didn't want to pay, the customers won't want to pay, but this takes time, and they felt that the MOT centres should absorb the time for doing it. And I mean, it begs a whole different debate, that, because they didn't discuss what happens with the cars that are less than 3 years old before MOT is due, as who checks those at that point. But yeah. That was something else for the IGA to get involved with, and I'm sure they are heavily involved with that one, that the MOT centres certainly don't need any additional costs coming into them in addition to this cap that they've got in place at the minute, do they?
No, definitely not. Because one of the issues facing a lot of independent garages is they're not necessarily making money out of the MOT work, but it is tying up ramps, it's tying up technicians. So maybe they're loading their work accordingly. So maybe they're not prioritizing MOT work because they're prioritizing servicing and repair work. And the implications of that are obvious for all to see, because there will be a delay, there will be a build-up in MOTs. So it's something that, I mean, common sense would sort of tell you that the price should be reviewed on a annual or every couple of years on a regular basis, because that's way out of line with what the actual cost to the garages are currently.
Particularly as you've seen inflation at such levels over the years, and it's been, like I say, since that was last increased 16 years ago. So yeah, it's significantly out of context of everything else happening at the minute, isn't it?
But we'll be back with the rest of the week's headlines after the break.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo.
So heading over to another story, and this we must thank Philippe, who we've had on the podcast previously, who he previously worked for JTO. And anybody that knows Philippe, he creates some fantastic visuals, particularly around the Chinese marketplace and what's happening with those manufacturers. Well, he's now gone on his own, consulted, but he did send his recent press release directly to us to cover on the podcast, and we're hoping to get him back on at some point in the future. But as always, it's a fascinating read, this one, isn't it, from Philippe, and some of the data that he's all covered and shared.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Philippe. So if you don't know Philippe, it's Philippe Munoz, Munoz, and definitely worth following him on LinkedIn, because he does post on a regular basis. And while a lot of his research and data is global, it really gives you a feel for what's happening in the market and some of the trends that will impact the UK UK. So this particular release, the headline is Chinese car brand sales outside China soared by more than 50% in Q1 2026. Yes, 50%. I mean, this is just massive. And what he's done is he's looked at the various markets that China exports to, and which is it's 86 markets, across the world. And according to the analysis, the Chinese car brands continue to gain traction not only in the emerging economies, but also in the developed ones where they already operate. And the analysis goes on to pinpoint that a total of 1.1 million vehicles from these Chinese brands were sold in these global markets between January and March of this year alone. And that total was 51% higher than the corresponding quarter in 2025. So no surprise that it's grown, but a big surprise by how much it's grown.
Yeah, like you say there, looking at the 40 countries in the emerging economies and 46 in the developed economies. But as you say there, 768,000 last year with 486,000 going into the emerging economies and 282,000 in the developed economies. And as you say, they're near double for both, with going up to 686 in Q1 of this year for the emerging economies and 468,000 for the developed economies there. But it does add a further breakdown, doesn't it, of you're looking at the EU, EFTA, and the UK being the number one, and that's gone at 88% increase year on year. Brazil's had 102% increase year on year, and interestingly, Curtis, Thailand 121% increase year on year between the first quarter of last year compared to the first quarter of this year. But the UK and Europe do top the table, don't they? We just over 285,000 vehicles being registered that came out of China into the EU and the UK there.
Yeah, the figures are really eye-watering, and this is very indicative of the sort of research that Philippe does. I mean, he does go into the minutiae, but it's also the analysis that he brings to the party. So we'll try and find a link to this story and add it to the newsletter that goes out Monday morning, because it's definitely worth 5 minutes of your time just having a look at.
It is, and sticking with manufacturers and that whole marketplace, and heading over to motortrader.com, and this is they picked up from YouGov that the rates the top car brands in the UK automotive ranking report, and the VW got an index score of 26.1, closely followed by Toyota in second place with a score of 24, followed by Mercedes at 23.1, then Volvo, and then Audi. So recognizable names there coming out in the top 5 there.
Yeah, and the index score is described in this particular report as being a brand health measure that is a composite of criteria including impression, value, quality, reputation, satisfaction, and recommend metrics. So it is pretty thorough, the research that goes in behind this by YouGov. And it's worth mentioning that the UK's most considered brands among new car buyers puts Japanese manufacturer Toyota as the number one choice, with 34% considering the brand. And also within this, MG was named the most improved automotive brand for customer satisfaction, which I know they were delighted with, because they did press release that and did pick up quite a bit of coverage over the course of the week on the back of that.
Yeah, and these Gov reports, if you're not registered to YouGov Automotive, then you can register to these YouGov reports, and they're readily available. And they do some great reports on these kind of things, so very worth keeping an eye out for. But we're going to head over to the last couple of stories, which is a couple of financial updates from, as Curtis said, some of the bigger operators in the sector here in the UK. And the first one is with car dealer, and this is that car dealer Steven Eagell delivers a strong and resilient performance despite a dip in profits. And this is that they published their annual accounts, and they saw the turnover and profits dip slightly, but the bosses remain pleased with the performance there. Interestingly, that Toyota specialist highlights external cost pressures and competitive labour market. So tying into a couple of our previous stories there.
Yeah, Steven Eagell, what a great business they are. It was established as a single site in Milton Keynes in 2002 as a Toyota site, and it's now grown into one of the biggest Toyota and Lexus dealer groups in the UK and probably Europe. And it's ranked 23 in the AM100. And geographically, it's got such a good spread across the UK because it covers the home counties, down to West Sussex, east of England, Midlands. So, a really good, solid business. And within the 4-year results, it showed that pre-tax profits of 10.8 million in the 12 months to the end of December last year. That figure was down by 30% on 2024's 15 million pounds, with bosses pointing to headwinds, including those external cost pressures and competitive labour market, which we do report on a lot when we look at the financial results from last year amongst the various dealer groups.
Yeah, and there's a nice little comment in here, like you say, at the end of the day, despite these headwinds, the group maintains strong cost control and operational efficiency, saying that the EBITDA of 21 million reflects the underlying strength of the business with robust profitability and cash generation sustained throughout the year, and that the performance highlights the resilience of the group's this diversified model and its ability to adapt efficiently to changing market dynamics. So, as you say there, I mean, they are, as I say, founded as a single Toyota site in Milton Keynes back in 2002 there, and now grown to Europe's biggest Toyota and Lexus dealer, is stated in the story there. So, as you say, I mean, a significant group and probably a name that's synonymous with everybody within the sector, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Which leads us in neatly with our final story, which is from AM Online. And the headline there is JCT600 marks 80 years after strong 2025 performance. So this is JCT600 ranked number 10 in the AM100 and very much part of the UK motor trade for those 80 years. And interestingly, it also started as a single site, but it was a garage in Bradford, and over the years has become one of the UK's largest family-owned dealer groups with more than 1.3 billion pounds in annual revenues. And over 50 dealerships. So these latest accounts show pre-tax profits increased to 20.1 million pounds, supported by growth in used car sales and after-sales performance, despite challenging market conditions, with JCT600 reporting revenues of 1.33 billion for the year 2025, maintaining its position among UK's largest independent dealer groups.
Yeah, as you say there, I mean, it's a name that I'm fully aware of. I mean, it's it was originally with Edward Tordoff back in the day, well before my time. That one, Curtis, before you say anything, and my mom remember the days of Jack Tordoff running it of now, which his sons John and Ian Tordoff subsequently have joined the business and to run it in the fourth generation of the business there. So 80 years now strong performance and it changed a little bit over the years, but I mean they were very much Sticker Lane over there in Bradford they might as well just renamed it with JCT, because they had every single dealership thereabouts on that road through Bradford there. So yeah, phenomenal business, and they just kept it going. They've adapted, they've changed the times, and keep going strong. Like I say, what a milestone of 80 years now and fourth generation family business from, as you said, Curtis, from that single site back in the days. So yeah, phenomenal business.
Yeah, no, it's such a great success story, and it's always interesting to hear what JCT600 are up to in terms of representation and as they grow the network. So it'll be fascinating to see how their celebrations pan out and what's in store for this year.
So that's it for this week. Hopefully, we got back into it after my time off. We'll see what the edit looks like afterwards, Curtis. Right, I think we've covered everything there. Let's say Curtis we'll get links to both the story there from Cazoo and the one from Philippe as well. Try and get those on the newsletter on Monday morning, so you can have a look at the detail behind the headlines in the story there. Don't forget, if you've not listened to the Brego interview there with Rupert Pontin, then do have a listen to that. It'll give you a flavour of what's happening and some of the changes and dynamics in the market, particularly when he starts talking through the Chinese new entrants and their entrance into the rental market and other things that are starting to happen at the minute. And we'll see what the weather is like this weekend, Curtis.
It's going to be hot. I think that's for certain. So, but that is all for now. So many thanks to you for listening to this Motor Trade Radio podcast. And until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Cazoo.